Hey, I'm Dr. Steve Ranicki with Ranicki Chiropractic. I want to address a topic that is becoming really popular and has been for a little while now, and that is probiotics. People are hearing a lot about it in the news these days and all over Facebook and all of the other places that they get information, but I don't see a lot of people that seem to know really what to look for in a probiotic, so I want to talk about that. I guess real quick before I get into what to look for in a probiotic, just to kind of share with you the impact that they can have. I think most people are hearing a lot about what probiotics can do to help your gut health, what they can do to help out with bowel regularity, gasiness, bloating, nausea, those kinds of things. But the reality is that they do much more than that for us. It seems like almost every week there's a new study coming out telling us something else that probiotics can do for us. So for example, some of the highlights of that, probiotics make up a huge portion of our immune system. It's estimated that maybe as much as 70% of our immune system is actually nothing to do with us, but rather the things that live inside of us. I suppose it probably as simple as they put up a no vacancy sign and they keep bad microorganisms from being able to set up shop because they're occupying all of the space. So much so that we're actually outnumbered 10-1, meaning that of the cells that make up your body, only 10% of them are actually you cells with your DNA. The other 90% are some sort of microorganism or another, whether it's a bacteria, a virus, a yeast, a pathogen, or some form of microorganism. Obviously, the more of those are ones that you want there, and the less of those are ones that you don't want there, the better you are probably going to feel and the better health you're going to express. So another thing that probiotics can do for us is they manufacture a lot of things that we need. Vitamins, essential fatty acids, and things of that nature can be made for us by probiotics. So B vitamins. We hear a lot about B vitamins being important for energy and for the health of our brain. The truth is that we don't absorb B vitamins very well from our food, but probiotics make those B vitamins for us. And because they're making a small little tiny trickle, not just all at once like when you eat a meal, but all throughout the day, they provide an ability for us to be sufficient in our B vitamins. Okay. Another thing that research is showing is that probiotics have a big impact on our moods and our emotions, and that we can see real big differences in people's levels of depression, anxiety, even psychosis when there is an upset in the balance of their bacteria. And a lot of people report changes in their moods and emotions after a cycle of antibiotics. So antibiotics obviously would decimate the good bacteria that you have in your body just as much as they would the bad ones that you were trying to deal with to get rid of your cold or your sinus problem or what have you. Then another one that I think is very cool, and certainly one that I think most of us would appreciate, is that probiotics can actually make a big difference in your weight. They did a very cool experiment where they took twin mice, fed one of them in a diet that was intended to make it obese, and sure enough it became obese, fed another one a diet that was intended to keep it thin, and sure enough it stayed thin, and then they took cultures of the bacteria out of the intestinal tracts of these mice and they swapped them. And what they found is that even without changing the diet, the skinny mouse became fat, the fat mouse became skinny. So that suggests that just changing the bacteria in your gut alone can be enough to cause either weight gain or weight loss, depending on which direction you're doing it. Then what they did is they even swapped the diets. So they started feeding the skinny mouse that had become heavy the fat mouse's diet, the diet that was intended to cause weight gain, and then they fed the mouse that was originally fed to be fat but had become skinnier, the skinny mouse diet, the diet that was intended to keep them thin, and the amount of weight gain and weight loss that each experienced became even more dramatic, suggesting that it's not just putting the bacteria in, but then feeding those bacteria the right types of foods makes a big difference for them. So we keep learning more and more, and I'm sure there's tons more that we'll find out these probiotics can do for us, but getting our microbiome, or the balance of bacteria, not just in our gut, but also in our sinuses and our ears and our lungs and every other nook and cranny of us, dialed in right and back to what it was supposed to be, has huge potential for keeping us healthy. Okay, so then on to what makes a probiotic a good probiotic. There are 4 criteria that I look for in a probiotic. So number one, first and foremost, you want to buy a probiotic from a place that has been keeping it refrigerated. These are live cultures of living bacteria, and if they are not kept dormant, then by the time you get them, they are going to be dead. They have a finite amount of food supply that's in that little capsule that they come in, and eventually, if not kept dormant, they're going to eat up all of their food supply. Some of them will start to starve off, others will start to cannibalize each other, And by the time you get it from the Sam's Club or Walmart or Rite Aid or any of those kinds of places that are not keeping it refrigerated, it is pretty much already all dead and you're getting little to no benefit out of it. Now, I've had some people say, oh, but this one doesn't need to be kept refrigerated, they say, because it has got the spore form of the bacteria instead of the live cell form. And it is true that spores do not need to be kept refrigerated. They can survive at room temperature and then they can come back out of the spore form and become a live cell again. But that takes some amount of time. It isn't an instantaneous process that just as soon as you swallow it, all of a sudden, boom, it's out of spore form and it's all of a sudden reproducing and replicating and carrying out its normal functions. And remember that whatever you consume shouldn't be living inside of you for a real long period of time. You should be having good enough bowel motility that you swallow something and then about 8 hours later you excrete it. And I'm just not convinced that in 8 hours the spore has really fully come out of spore form and has started reproducing and replicating itself enough that you are doing a good job of colonizing your gut. And I would say, doesn't it just make a lot more sense to take something that is still currently in the whole cell form, albeit kept dormant, and that will come out of dormancy very, very quickly once it's brought up to at least room temperature, if not your body's temperature, and then can start replicating and reproducing right away before it's even made it past your stomach and into your small intestine. Most of the capsules are designed to withstand stomach acid and then to open up and deliver their payload in the small intestine, but inside of the capsule, it's already starting to exhibit the normal reproductive cycle of life already. So, number one, first and foremost, I would recommend getting one that has been kept refrigerated. I think you will get much better results and success from one that has been kept refrigerated. Number two, you want to look for one that has many different strains of bacteria in it. Not just 8 gazillion international units of Lactobacillus acidophilus, which is a great probiotic to have, but it is not the only one that matters. It is not the one that I would argue is even the most important one. And I'll talk about that in number 3. So instead what you want is you want to look for one that's got about 9 or 10 different strains. That seems to be about the most that we can put together in one capsule without them starting to fight amongst themselves. So about 9 or 10 different strains is really kind of the ideal for how many different strains of bacteria you want to see in a probiotic capsule. I'm a lot less concerned with how many international units it has of each. So if it's only 1 million international units or 1 million cells, would be another way of saying it, of each, that's fine by me. And I would prefer that over one that says it's got 3 trillion of one particular strain. So the third criteria that I look for in a probiotic is that you want a specific strain called Lactobacillus plantarum. Plantarum, like plant. This would be the bacteria that would grow naturally all over the surface of plants, fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. So once upon a time when we lived as hunter-gatherers, we would pick the tomato or the pepper or the apple right off of the tree or the plant or the vine, and then we would bite into it and we would be inoculating our gut with all of these beneficial bacteria living all over the surface of it, and there would be many, but plantarum would be the dominant one. So when we had that kind of a diet where we were eating a lot off of the land and picking things right off of the tree or the plant or the vine, that would be the predominant bacteria that we would be introducing into our gut. And when we look at what lives in the intestinal tracts of people who still live as hunter-gatherers, we have a few pockets of those still left in the world where we haven't industrialized them. Those people look at the number one dominant strain in their bodies, and it's not Lactobacillus acidophilus, it is Lactobacillus plantarum. Okay, so that's the one that I think that you really, really want to make sure is there inside of the probiotic. The fourth criteria that I look for is you want to make sure that in the manufacturing process, when they are growing out the cultures of these cells, that they're not using any dairy, any corn, any wheat, or any soy. Why not those 4 things? Well, dairy is not always, but mostly produced with the use of antibiotics. Remember that in commercial farming and commercial agriculture, they're almost exclusively feeding the cows antibiotics continuously and non-stop. And those antibiotics, of course, will get into the cow's milk. And so if you've got antibiotics in the cow's milk and now you're trying to use that milk to grow probiotics, the antibiotics, of course, are going to work against and probably damage and destroy the probiotics, even though they might have put a live culture into the milk before the process got started. So no dairy there for sure. Then wheat, corn, and soy. Unless they specify organic in the United States, 95% of all wheat, corn, and soy are genetically modified to be able to withstand Roundup, the weed killer Roundup. That's what they call Roundup Ready. And so the weed killer Roundup is going to have antimicrobial properties, and that again could damage the probiotics that would be found in the capsule if you were trying to take one that has been made where they grew it out on cornstarch or on wheat starch or on soybean flour, any of that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that the whole process has been dairy, corn, wheat, and soy free. Okay. I should make a correction there. Wheat has not been genetically modified to be Roundup ready, but in the process of harvesting wheat, they purposely spray Roundup all over the wheat field. So it still has the wheat still has all Roundup on it unless it specifies organic. Okay. So those are the 4 criteria you want to look for in a probiotic. There's plenty of good brands out there that you can find at your local Whole Foods or whatever organic stores you got nearby you. The one that we carry in my office, the one that I like and recommend the most, is called Probiotic Sufficiency by Innate Choice. So you can certainly look for that online, or if you're here in the Savannah area, you can just come by Ranicki Chiropractic. We have that, we keep it refrigerated, and it will do you very, very well. All right, so thanks for your attention again. Hopefully you got some good information out about probiotics with that, and keep watching for more and more information. Thank you.